Throughout the daily course of your life, you are faced constantly with the question of how you would like to be using your mind, or in more mechanical terms, what you would like to be thinking about. Because you are always thinking about something, or you are reflecting on things silently. And when you are thinking, you are either thinking progressively, in a linear way, sort of like reading music or a story where there's an evolution to your thoughts and you're not stuck. And that's a positive state to be in, and it feels good. And the way that you can tell that you're not in that state is if your thoughts become cyclical. If you start thinking about the same subjects over and over again, especially things that you can't do anything about, where nothing has changed. You might have a fixation on how people view you, for example. Or you might have a fixation on the idea that people think a certain way, and that really bothers you, so you think about it a lot. You go, how could they think this way? How could they say these things? But the way to approach those issues without getting stuck in some kind of a rut is to see each individual person as a character on a stage in the story of your life. They're just a person saying things and doing things. If you're watching a movie, it's a lot easier to look at people who think things that you disagree with, that you find disagreeable, and to still enjoy the drama of it, because you aren't looking at them and going, how could they think that way? You might have that thought to some degree, but it isn't something that you attribute to a character in a movie in the way that you do with people, as this very hard fact that you find unconscionable. Like with a movie villain, you understand the necessity of their existence to the telling of the story. You aren't sitting there going, I wish this person didn't exist at all in the context of this movie. But in the world, you might look at people and go, well, how could anybody think like this? Nobody should think like this. And you kind of wish them away, even in the sense of going, their mind should change. But if you want people's minds to change, then you are out of touch with the heart of the earth, I would say. You're out of touch with the essence of human society, because human society always involves polarity. That's been in its composition forever, because there are any kind of people in this society. Anybody can exist, and any kind of person does. So what is a person in that sense? A person is motivation systems. A person is the choices that they are making when they come to a given, choice point in their life, a chance to make a decision of some kind. So when you look at people and you're poring over their decision-making capacity, and it's frustrating you, or it's making you upset, or you look at somebody and you go, wow, they make, what a great person. They're charitable, they're kind-spirited, whatever it is. These kinds of awarenesses are the structure of a person's character. And that's a nice sort of parallel between story and the world, is that we use the word character to describe a person. There's a character in a play, but a person's character is defined by how they respond to the circumstances that they're in. And having character is a good thing. Somebody who has no character is seen as being somebody who has no real values. And I think we have an inherent understanding of the worthiness of developing values. So that's an important thing to do in your life, is to be aware of what kind of character you would like to have. And also you can have an understanding of what kind of character you would like to be in a narrative sense, where it's like you come into a space and people remember you for this thing or that thing. That's the kind of character you are in a narrative sense in the world. You came in, you were exuberant, you were lively, or you sulked in a corner, or whatever you did that was this sort of superficial quality, which is all that people can read about you when they're just seeing you out in the world. But what people can also remember is if you have really decent values. If you're, kind-hearted, if you're thoughtful, if you're well-spoken, if you care. I think that, and if you're magnanimous in the sense of like not holding people to your standards. You have your standards for yourself. You know you can't hold other people to your standards because they can only be held to their own standards. They can hear all day long what your standards are and what other people's standards are, and it will never reach them that there is value in that until they're ready, until they've decided that that's who they are, that those are standards that they want to make their standards as well. So a lot of these thoughts have been a little bit not exactly well bound together, but hopefully this all has had some meaning in it. But to bring it back to the beginning, what I was talking about, the reason I was mentioning these things is that our assessment of people's characters and how they behave in the world and their relative value to us makes up the narrative structure of our minds that we are immersed in all the time. It makes up the thought structure of, our inner world, in addition to one other thing, which is systems of some kind. Because you can sit around thinking about, well, how does this work? How does that work? You can think about biology or nature or, mechanisms, mechanical objects. You can think about the nature of the universe. And these things all factor into a person's, character and their worldliness in the sense of how they are relating to the circumstances around them, which is what it's all about. And so when you think about your thoughts and you think about the cycles that you go through in your mind, just remember that all day long you are faced with the question of what you would like to be doing with your mind. And so if you can take a step back and see what you are doing with your mind, just notice how it makes you feel. If you're involved in cyclical thinking about the human condition or people, these kinds of things, it can be very draining. But, speaking on the human condition, anything that you are thinking that doesn't translate directly into action isn't doing anything to affect the system, isn't doing anything to affect what is happening. It is affecting you, and it's giving you understandings and experiences that are important to your development of yourself. And that's where and that's where having an inner dialogue about stuff isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you're hashing out conversations or arguments with people in your mind and stuff like that, and you're thinking, you're having an internal debate about things, that can help you arrive on an ultimate viewpoint. But when you have the ultimate viewpoint that you're looking for in being that way and in doing those things, then it's sort of like a really well-tuned engine on a car. It just works. You're not engaged in cyclical thinking. You know what you think already. You've come to your argument, whatever it would be, and it has stabilized itself so that if you're encountered with an idea in the world, you just automatically know how you feel about it. You don't have to work things out. You don't have to figure things out. You become a well-oiled machine in that way. And that is a worthy pursuit, because when you arrive in that place, all of a sudden you stop viewing the world as this kind of arena, an arena of ideas where things are being worked out and figured out, and it's people, so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that, and they have to adjust to each other and figure things out. And instead what happens is you just begin to look at society and you see all of the cycles in society. You see the patterns playing out, how people behave, how they think, how they feel, their obstinate natures and how stubborn they are about their beliefs, and holding on to them so tightly and fighting for their survival in this social, this Darwinian arena for the survival of the fittest idea. But the thing is, the fittest idea has no real, this is going to sound sort of paradoxical when I say it at first, but it has no real right to survive in society. And what I mean by that is that whether an idea can spread is fully dependent on the people whom that idea arrives upon. And so you can have the best thought in the world. You can be like Bernie Sanders, explaining everything that's wrong with the American healthcare system and our way of handling student debt and these sorts of things, and explaining the solutions. And people can look at you and dismiss you completely, because that is their, you could say, God-given right. People have the literal right to be as stupid as they want to be. And so no matter how much understanding you have, you may not be able to communicate with them effectively, because they may be so stubbornly attached to their ideas that they won't change. And you can't create the circumstances that will allow that. But what you can do at that point is, what you can do at that point is you can either involve yourself in the sense of injustice. You say, my ideas aren't spreading. How could this be? And you can think about, other people's views and feelings, and you can ruminate on it and be upset about it. Or what you can do is recognize that is just affecting you. If you're doing that, it's affecting what you're doing with your thoughts. You're letting other people sort of set the rhythm for your day. You're letting them write the script, because they're not going to change, and you're not going to stop being upset about that fact. So you're just going to be stuck in that feeling. And so the solution here is to be able to take a step back and just recognize that the world is full of disagreement. It's full of differences. And it's very human to want to see a change in that pattern, to want to see those differences be resolved, and for those things to become unstuck. And to take actions to help do that is very important. But what's also important is just how you are doing as a person, and how you're using your mind, how you're experiencing the world, because that's going to directly affect your well-being. It's going to affect how healthy you are. And so in order to have the best state of health, you have to let go of how other people are behaving. Instead of getting upset about the decisions that they're making, it's better to just look at them and be able to go, this is the kind of person that they are. This is the character they're playing on the stage of life. And the world has many injustices in it because people perpetuate those injustices. At some point, you have to accept the injustice. I don't mean that you have to believe it will never change and you have to not do anything about it. But what I mean is that you can't be holding so tightly onto people in your heart that you need them to change in order for you to be happy, because that puts you in a state of bondage. There's a little bit of this that's like, you have to sort of be, you have to be capable of staying happy no matter what is happening. It's a little bit like being, I don't know if this is necessarily a true story, but it's that old story of Nero watching Rome burn and fiddling. Now, I mean, he was probably crazy if that was a true story. But it's that having that attitude to be able to do that, because why not? If other people look at you and they say, you don't have the appropriate sense of gravity about this situation, that's because they're imposing their sense of gravity on you. And it may be that they need to feel that way. They need to feel their feelings in that way. They need to feel the harshness of the world. And they need to feel that injustice, and they need to be upset about it, because that being upset will motivate them to action. But feeling upset is not required for action for everybody else. And so that's the message that I wanted to share here, is that if you can bring yourself into a state of neutrally observing the circumstances in your life and the circumstances of people being the way that people are, what you're looking for is a way to appraise those people. You're wondering who they are and whether or not, you're going to want to spend time with them. And people that you don't want to spend time with, you can just remember that they're out there in the world and they have a kind of logic to the way that they think. You can try to understand their logic and see if you can reason with them. But it's very hard to reason with people if you're not capable of using their own logic. You have to use their own logic against them. You have to reveal their hypocrisies. That is a key to reaching them, because otherwise you're just saying a point of view they've heard millions of times and they already know that they disagree with. And so the last thing I'll say is that what all this has been about that I'm talking about is the quest essentially to let go of the world, to just let go of it, because letting go of it doesn't mean that you won't do anything to change it. It just means that you're letting go of the need to have its vicissitudes, its changes affect you directly, emotionally, affect the way you think, affect the way that you feel, in any way other than seeking the correct way to respond to it.